Hey, what's up, guys? So a lot of you guys have been asking me about the Escort IX, the new radar detector that Escort has recently released. It's basically a modernized version of one of Escort's best-selling detectors, the 9500 IX. That's an older detector, but it's a very popular one. It's a very well-selling, well-reviewed detector. You know, it's one of the most popular ones you'll find out on the market. Now, the thing is, that detector's a little bit dated. It's a little bit older, and it's for that reason that Escort has taken a lot of the, updates that they've come up with since that they've applied to other detectors, and they've taken all those modernized updates and applied it to the 9500 IX to basically have an updated version, a modernized version of one of their best-selling detectors of all time, and that's basically what the IX is. Now, I don't actually have one here. I haven't bought one, I haven't tested one, I haven't had one shipped to me, because of the fact that, me personally, I'm just not that excited about the detector. It's not really anything new or revolutionary, you know? There are a couple things that are new for Escort that they're bringing out that we haven't seen before, but for the most part, it's taking existing technology that we've seen in other products and kind of bringing it over to the 9500 IX. So it's not really anything new or exciting that I'm like super eager to get my hands on, you know? But nonetheless, I still think it would be a very popular detector for a lot of people. In a way, it kind of reminds me of the Toyota Camry, you know? The Camry's not necessarily a flashy or fancy or maybe even fun car, you know, but it's a solid, reliable car. They sell tons of it, and it makes a lot of money for Toyota. And in the same way, this is kind of the same thing. It's not anything really flashy or fancy, but nonetheless, I think it's going to be a good, solid, reliable detector. You know, good in the city and the highway, decent performance, decent blind spot filtering, all the different features, you know, red light camera alerts, all that kind of stuff. I think it's going to be a good all-around detector. So in this video, I just kind of want to give you guys my thoughts on the detector, which may sound a little bit weird, again, because I haven't even tested one myself. I don't have one here, you know, but because of the fact that this detector is basically a whole bunch of existing technology all mashed into one, and there's already been tests, you know, done on the forums. People have been sharing their impressions and videos and all this kind of stuff. So with that said, I just kind of want to give you guys an overall taste of the detector based on what I've seen from other people, and also what we can expect from other detectors and everything I've read and seen and researched and all that kind of stuff. So like I said, it's basically a modernized, updated version of the 9500 IX. 9500 IX, you know, detected X-band, K-band, KA, laser, all that kind of stuff. It also had a GPS chip built in, so you get your GPS lockouts, your automatic lockouts, you've got your red light camera alerts, all the kind of basic core functionality that most people look for in a radar detector these days, you know? However, some of the modernized updates include things like an updated display. You know, the OLED display that we see in the Max, the X70, the Passport, rather than the LED display that we had on the 9500 IX, there's now this multicolor, you know, updated higher resolution OLED display that we're getting here on the IX. Also can display your speed limit information when you're paired with Escort Live. You've got a lot more information available now on the screen, and it looks a lot newer and a lot nicer. This detector also has Bluetooth built in, so for those of you guys familiar with the Max 2 or the Passport or the Max 360, for example, these detectors have Bluetooth built in, so you can pair it with your phone and run Escort Live, which will give you things like real-time alerts to and from the cloud. It makes it easier to actually, you know, adjust the detector settings from your phone rather than having to go into the detector settings itself. You can actually use your phone as a dedicated display for your detector, so you got some nice benefits, you know, without having to purchase an additional Bluetooth cable to run Escort Live. The Bluetooth is actually built into the detector. There's a slick new magnetic mount that we haven't seen before. Escort's actually introduced a cool new magnetic mount on the Maxes, like the Max 2, the Max 360, and it's actually now one of my favorite mounts available in any radar detector. It actually makes it really easy to attach and remove your radar detector from your windshield. Now they have a new version of it available for the IX. It's a really slick one, basically pops right on and off without having to slide in and out. It's a pretty cool mount. I think that's pretty cool. It's actually one of the new things that's been introduced with the IX that we haven't seen before with any other detector. This detector also does feature BSRDR, just like we saw with the Passport and the X70. It's a simplified version of BSRDR. Rather than having, you know, 10 segments like on the red line, it's got 4 like the Passport and the X70. So it's a simplified version of BSRDR, which is nice because that will basically help speed up the detector, which has kind of been one of the issues with the M4s. Like one of the reasons that I sold my 9500 IX, you know, I used to own one years ago, it was actually my first radar detector when I got into the hobby. One of the reasons that I actually sold it was kind of slow at alerting to alerts. There's a pretty decent likelihood that you could miss some faster shots. BSRDR will help kind of speed up the detector to make it less likely that you're going to be missing some of those faster alerts. The detector should also have a longer range than what we've seen with some of the previous M4s. There's been some testing done recently, and I'll actually go ahead and share the results with you guys in just a second, but this one should actually have better performance than what we've seen from some of the earlier models of the M4 detectors. In terms of filtering, this detector features what Escort is calling IVT, the ability to filter out in-vehicle technology like your collision avoidance systems, your blind spot monitoring systems, basically a K-band filter. Now this filter is the same idea of what they've introduced with the Maxes, the ability to see the DNA of the signal and all that kind of stuff. You have the ability to filter out blind spot falses without having to resort to TSR, so again, you won't be missing some of those briefer alerts on K-band, which is really nice. This filter you can't turn on and off. It's built into the detector, again, like the Maxes. We're seeing the same sort of thing in other detectors as well from, other brands and other manufacturers. The initial feedback that we're getting on this new implementation of IVT, that it's pretty okay. It's pretty decent. It does a good job of filtering out a lot of cars. When a punch-through happens and you do get a K-band false with this detector, people are reporting that you get a really intense blast of K-band, kind of reminiscent of what we saw with the M3s with TSR on. Rather than a weak signal that maybe gradually builds up or something, you get this like strong blast of K-band that sounds like instant on. It may lead you to like panic braking or something, So it's not necessarily just the fact of whether it can or can't filter the signals, but how it actually presents the alerts when it does false. And with this one, it seems like the alert presentation isn't quite as good as with some of the other detectors that may have a similar ability to filter out false alerts. So with this one, people don't seem to be too thrilled about the blind spot filtering. Again, it's pretty good. It's an improvement over what we've seen before, but it could still use a little bit of work. And that seems to be the overall consensus so far of what I'm hearing from people on the forums who are driving around with the IX. There's also a new feature called Auto Low K. Those of you guys familiar with auto mode, basically reduces the sensitivity of the detector. You can also do that a little bit further, specifically on K-band. So rather than just, highway mode and auto mode, there's now also Auto Low K. And Auto Low K will basically allow you to reduce the K-band sensitivity even further to help filter out some of the weak signals on the side of the road as you drive by, or even some blind spot falses if they're weaker and farther out ahead of you, So that will actually help cut down on some of the false alerts at the expense of cutting down on range. But again, trade-offs with filtering and performance as always, but that's a new feature that they've introduced now on the IX that they've had on some other detectors like the International Red Line and so on, but on the North American detectors, it's new for the North American ones to have this new auto low K feature. Now, in terms of performance, the guys down in Texas recently tested an IX against, some of the other typical contenders. You've got the Escort Red Line, there's the new Radenso XP that's going to be coming out in September. You've got the Uniden detectors, LRD 950, DFR7. You've got the RX65 M4, which is one of the original implementations of the M4 platform detectors that the IX is based upon. And so we're starting to get a feel of how this guy actually compares to the competition. There haven't been any results posted yet as far as how it compares to like the 9500iX or the Passport or X70 or the Maxes or Max 2, Max 360, of course. So again, it's a new detector and initial results are coming out, but we do have some initial results and I want to go ahead and share those with you guys. Now, if you want to see all of the results that we've seen so far, I'm going to go ahead and put the links down in the video description to where you can go ahead and take a look at the test results for yourself. But in short, what we're seeing so far is on 33.8, you've got the Red Line and the Radenso XP. You're both able to outrange the Escort IX, but the IX is able to outrange the Uniden detectors as well as the older RX65 M4. And this kind of makes sense. The Unidens are not so strong on 33.8, and the older RX65, again, that's an older version of the M4 detector. So we are seeing some improvements over the original versions, but the Red Line, of course, gives you better range. Not really a big surprise there. Now, moving on to 34.7, things change a little bit. In that case, again, Red Line is able to beat the IX, no surprise. The Unidens are also able to outrange the IX as well, but that's kind of to be expected considering the Unidens are pretty hot generally on 34.7, not so much on 33.8. So pretty, expected there in that regard. In terms of the RX65, again, the IX was able to beat the RX65, so good, that makes sense as well. 35.5, things are a little bit different. So on 35.5, the Red Line was able to beat, again, the other detectors, but all the other detectors were pretty comparable in performance on 35.5. Finally, on K-band, the testing that was done on K-band, basically what they saw was the Red Line XP was able to beat the IX, but most of the other detectors were pretty similar in terms of K-band performance. So as you can see, the IX may beat some detectors on some bands, but those detectors may beat the IX on other bands. It kind of goes back and forth. The Red Line will generally beat the IX, as to be expected. That's the high performance detector that doesn't have a lot of good filtering, but it's more of like your performance rockstar, right? Unidens, maybe better on 34.7, not necessarily on 33.8. Radenso XP is comparable or better performance based on what we're seeing so far, and that's with a kind of a beta unit so far. And kind of the overall gist of it is it's going to provide adequate performance, reasonable range in most situations. It's not going to be your high performance unit. There are detectors out there that can give you, better performance for potentially even less money. So that's kind of one of the things this comes down to, is there's a fair number of options. I'm going to get into that in just a second. Some of the other options that are out there from Escort as well as from other brands and other manufacturers. So basically this is going to be a good all-around unit, easy plug and play, put it on your windshield, you got your lockouts, they're automatic, reasonable performance, reasonable filtering, not necessarily the best. There are other products that may perform better. But for somebody who's not necessarily a radar detector enthusiast, if you want something that's just simple and easy to use, again, that's like the Maxes, that's kind of what the forte of this detector is going to be. It's easy to take on and off your windshield, the lockouts are automatic, it's easy to pair with your phone, it's got a bunch of cool functionality, and a lot of that convenience, you're going to pay a little bit more for it with the iX. So actually with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at kind of how it compares to some of the other options out there as well. Let's go ahead and start with the original Escort Passport Max. Now, the Max actually retails for $550, but online you can find it now because it's being discontinued for less than $300. The iX is going to retail for $499. Let's call it $500. So the Max is actually over $200 less than the iX. Again, it's being discontinued. But the Max, according to Escort, you're going to have better performance and you're going to have better blind spot filtering capabilities. So a better performing detector with all the same features for less money. Kind of makes you wonder. Actually, in that said, the Max doesn't have Bluetooth. So what about the Max 2? Well, the Max 2 is the same thing as the Max plus the Bluetooth built in, which the iX has. So that's actually a better, competitor, more apples to apples, right? Now, the Max 2 retails for $600, but you can find it online now for less than $400. So you're going to be saving over, $100 going for the Max 2. Rumor has it the Max 2 may be discontinued. I'm not totally sure yet, but it may be. And it would actually kind of make sense if it does. I'll talk about that in just a second. Now, the Max 2, that detector, again, better performance, better filtering, less money. It doesn't have the same, magnetic mount that the iX has, so the iX has a cooler mount. That's cool. But other than that, I mean, the Max 2 has better performance and better filtering for less money, which again kind of makes me wonder, why would somebody get an iX? So again, as you can see, I'm kind of sitting here like, I don't quite get it, To be fair, the iX is $499, but that's the retail price. That price when it comes online is going to eventually drop over time, right? So $499, whereas the Max 2 is $599. So the retail price is actually $100 higher on the Max 2. But because the price has actually dropped online, the Max 2 you can get it for over $100 less than the iX. So it's not quite an apples to apples comparison talking about retail versus the online price you can actually get, right? But nonetheless, that's actually what we're seeing if you actually wanted to go out and purchase one of these detectors today. And if you do, I'm going to have links down in the video description for all the different detectors that we talk about. Now, what about the other detectors in Escort's lineup? Well, we know the Max is being discontinued. The Max 2, I'm not entirely sure. It'll kind of make sense if it does, and here's why. If they decide to do it, what we're looking at is kind of your entry-level detector is going to be your Escort X70. That's your entry-level detector that's got the updated display and BSRDR and all that kind of cool stuff, but it doesn't have a GPS chip built in, so no lockouts, no red light camera alerts, etc. If you want the GPS functionality built in, then you could step up to the Escort iX, right? This new detector that's coming out. This will give you a more well-rounded detector, especially for use in the city. If you want your arrows, then you can get the Max 360, right? Similar idea, better performance, better filtering, plus the arrows on the Max 360. If you want maximum performance, you can go to the Escort Red line. So that's your maximum performance detector. If you want something wireless, you can get the Solo S3, right? Not a very good performance detector, but for people who do want a wireless detector, that's an option that Escort makes. If you want a remote detector, you've got the 9500 CI, right? So that's your remote one. Also comes with Escort's laser shifters, the LSPs, which don't perform all that great. They're okay against some of the older guns, but that 9500 CI is kind of your remote version of what Escort is offering today. So In that sense, the lineup actually makes sense. Everything from the X70 to the iX to the Max 360. You've also got the Redline and the Solo S3, as well as the 9500 Ci. So that lineup actually kind of makes sense. If they're keeping the Max 2, that's kind of the weird one that makes it really hard to justify why somebody would get an iX, because the Max 2 is going to offer you better performance, better filtering, and if you were to go out and buy it on the market today, actually costs you less money. Over time, I'm sure the iX is going to drop in price. You'll see it on Amazon. I don't actually think it's available there yet, and it will. Once the price of the iX actually drops over time to be less than the Max 2, that would kind of change things up, and things would make a little bit more sense, because the more expensive detectors should offer better performance and capabilities, but currently with the Max 2, that's not the case. So, there's some differences. So again, that's also one of the reasons why I look at this detector and I'm like, so it's kind of the enthusiast in me wanting something fresh and new, and I like having something exciting and new. And then also sitting there looking at the Max 2 and the iX, I'm kind of like, why exactly? If somebody wants the magnetic mount, I guess, cool. But anyways, that's kind of my take on how things stand in the Escort lineup. Now, what about the competition? Because you've got a lot of non-Escorts available as well. Like you've got the Uniden DFR7, you've got the Radenso XP, you've got the Radenso Pro, you've got the iX. So you've got a lot of detectors that are all kind of similar in idea. They're your like middle of the range detection performance, right? Plenty of range in most situations in the city and the highway. You've got your GPS lockouts, you've got your blind spot filtering. No arrows. They're very, very similar in idea, right? So let's actually talk about how those compare. Well, if you've got the Uniden retails for $299. The iX is another $200 more at $499. So the Uniden is going to give you better performance on 34/7, not as good on 33/8. The blind spot filtering, I believe, should be better. We should see. Uniden has manual lockouts. The Escorts are easier to use if they're automatic. Escort's customer service should actually be better than Uniden, but Unidens have been improving. So you kind of have to ask yourself, like, what exactly are you getting for the extra $200 with the Escort over the Uniden? Well, I guess you're getting the automatic lockouts, which again are really nice. You're getting a better display. You're getting Bluetooth built into the detector. You're getting the magnetic mount. So you are getting a number of things, and you kind of have to ask yourself whether or not that is worth it. If maybe you see more 34/7 or 33/8 in your area, you can factor that in, and you can always reference the RDFGS for that kind of stuff. Link to that in the video description too. So like there's things that the iX offers that you may want to actually choose over the Uniden detectors, maybe a better ramp up or whatever the case may be. So there's reasons to do it, but it's not like a clear decisive win of whether or not that $200 is worth it. What about the Radenso XP? That guy's going to retail for $399, so $100 less, and that guy offers similar if not better performance. It looks like better blind spot filtering, manual GPS lockouts instead of automatic. The red light cameras, it also has red light camera support. The red light camera alerts are directional, meaning if the red light camera monitors this direction but not that direction, both detectors will alert you in this direction but not that direction to help cut down on the false alerts, So both of them have good red light camera support. The iX has the, multicolor OLED display. It's got the magnetic mount. The GPS lockouts are automatic instead of manual, so there's things we can go back and forth with all these things. The Radenso Pro, you've got your smaller detector. The lockouts are manual, but they're still buggy. So we can do this all day long, and kind of seems like every detector has its place. The iX, kind of how it seems to sort of rest within the lineup of all the detectors within this kind of similar performance and feature set, is going to be the most expensive one, but the most convenient one. And I say most convenient because of the fact primarily that the GPS lockouts are automatic. For somebody who's not a radar detector expert, you just want something simple and you can put it on your windshield, and you don't have to, figure out what's going on when the radar detector goes off to K-band. If it's going off to K-band, is that a false alert? Well, I don't know. Do I see a speed sign ahead of me? Do I see a grocery store? If I do, lock it out. Is that false alert coming from a Chevy or an Acura? If so, don't lock it out. Is that K-band alert coming from a police officer a block or two away? Don't lock it out, So with the automatic lockouts, the detector will actually figure that stuff out for you, so you don't make any mistakes when you're creating the lockouts. So in that sense, somebody who wants an easier to use experience, who isn't spending time trying to figure out what's going on around them and whether or not they should do the lockout, that's actually kind of nice. Is that worth the extra money over some of the other options? Again, that's kind of one of the things that it comes down to. Do you want the multicolor OLED display? Do you want the Bluetooth support? Do you want the magnetic mount? So there's different reasons to choose this detector. Again, I wouldn't say personally it's like head and shoulders above the competition, but I do think it's a solid, you know, all-around good detector. Again, it's a modernized version of the 9500IX, which is one of Escort's best-selling detectors of all time. It's got great reviews on Amazon, and it's great as a standard consumer detector. Me personally, as an enthusiast, I prefer something with better performance, you know, like better capabilities, but more features. Like, I want a higher end, like, performance unit, you know, and that can actually make the difference between a ticket or not. But somebody else, if you just want something easier to use and you're willing to sacrifice a couple things, the 9500IX was a good choice. And in that way, the IX, it's kind of a similar mindset, but it improves a lot of these things. It should have better performance. This hasn't been tested yet, but it should have better performance than the 9500X. It looks like it's going to offer better blind spot filtering, and it's going to be able to do this without having to resort to TSR. You've got the newer display. You've got Bluetooth built into the detectors, so even though it's the same fundamental platform of the M4-based detector, it's got some modernized updates that I think would be really popular with a lot of people out there looking for a detector. So again, while to me it's not something that I'm personally all that, you know, enthusiastic and excited about, nonetheless, I can look around and say, you know what, I think this is a great option for a lot of people. So, for those of you guys wondering about my take on the IX, even though, again, I haven't tested one, I don't have my hands on one, I've simply been, you know, looking around, I'm familiar with, you know, the other detectors that this is based on, you know, I've looked around at the test results and other people's information, but based on what I can see so far, that's kind of my take on the IX. I can see it being a popular detector, even if it's not necessarily one that excites me. So, thanks to all of you guys who have asked. I hope this video has been helpful. If you want more information about the detector, down in the video description, I'm going to put some links to the discussions on RDF, on Escort's forum, where you can read up on the detector, get other people's, you know, impressions of it, their comments, their take, what they think as well. You know, other people who are actually using it. Yeah, so all that stuff will be down there. For those of you guys who have already purchased an IX, or you're going to, when you get it and you're driving around and you get familiar with it, let me know what you think. Let me know what your thoughts are. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Why? You know, is it an improvement over a previous detector you've seen, or do you prefer maybe another detector? Let me know what your take is on it, because again, we're all just kind of sharing information. You know, what do you think? What do I think? And we're just talking about all this stuff together. So awesome. Looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say. I hope this has been helpful. It's kind of new for me to be like, let me tell you about a detector that I don't even have, which seems a little bit silly, you know, but nonetheless, that's kind of my take on things so far. And I hope it's been helpful. I think it will be, but yeah, anyways, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.